Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the interweb. Today we're talking about the possibility of a remake to Siren. Now, of course, there's no leaks or rumors that are hinting at this at all. It's just straight desire that I want. And there's a little community online who is wanting a remake to this game. So if you don't know what this game is considered the peak of survival horror. This was the first game to be terrifying, and it was the last game to be terrifying. I'm 22 years old. This game has 72 missions. I've never finished the game. I never have. It's always scared me to the point that I just quit playing it, or I just, for whatever reason, don't come back to it because I'm just so uneasy after playing it. I can only get through maybe 5 missions at a time when I play it, and I recently restarted it because of PlayStation Now, and I wanted to see what this game looked like upscaled to 1080p. I'm about to get a Samsung television that automatically upscales everything to 4K HDR with an autonomous filters, so that's gonna be pretty cool when I start this game back in a couple days. But what I'm really excited about is that the possibility of this game getting a remake on PlayStation 5. Look at every single game that is launching on the PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X. All the games that are worth getting are survival horror. All the games that are not worth getting, like Godfall, are not survival horror. PlayStation, for whatever reason, is synonymous with survival horror, whether it's hardcore survival horror like Siren or Resident Evil, or the kiddie survival horror stuff like Medieval and Bloodborne. There is a ton of survival horror available on the Sony consoles, and with that being said, it's kind of a no-brainer that they would eventually maybe issue a remake of Siren. Siren is a game that is just, I don't know how to describe it without spoiling anything. It's just so perfect, and the amount of horror you feel when you play it, even with its PlayStation 2 graphics, it's just insane. And when you play through it and you start seeing everything unfold, and you start seeing the horror and the abilities, and you just get that uneasy feeling of knowing if you finish a mission, which each mission is like 5 to 10 minutes long, if you die, you have to restart from the beginning. And just the extra fear of knowing there's no checkpoints, you get one chance, that just adds to it. And a remake of Siren would do insanely well. If when you look at this console generation, the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, if you're watching this in the future, survival horror has kind of sucked. There's not really been any scary games. Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3, they were phenomenal games, but there wasn't really a lot of horror. Resident Evil 7 is an okay game, but it's more Call of Duty than survival horror. And if you look at all the other stuff that's came out that are horror games, or considered horror, such as Death Stranding and Prey, these games were not survival horror at all. They were kinda just run and gun shooters, or in Death Stranding's case, it was a walking simulator with some combat thrown in here and there. Which is good because it worked out in its favor. It worked out pretty well. That game is quite enjoyable. But when you look at like the way survival horror has gone since the PlayStation 2, it sucked this generation. It sucked on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. The PS Vita and PSP didn't really have anything survival horror, but PlayStation 2 was the pinnacle. There was so many games on that console that was worth playing. There were so many games that were insanely fun, but all these games had something in common. They were either survival horror or had survival horror aspects. And a remake to Siren would bring us back to that generation, and it would probably sell easily at least 5 million units. And once it sold that many units, it would be pushed everywhere. We would start seeing so many survival horror, and we would be able to see the synonymous Sony survival horror genres come back. This could possibly lead to a remake of Silent Hill. This could possibly lead to a better done, more horror Resident Evil 4 remake, which we already know is pretty much happening. It's leaked out everywhere. And at this point, you know, Capcom's not even trying to hide it. But if Siren gets that beautiful remake treatment, and let's say it is coming for the PlayStation 5, let's just pretend for a second. That game in 4K HDR or 8K HDR, and keep in mind, the PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 5 is going to support 4K 120. That is going to be the default, and 8K 8K 240, I believe it is. That's the default settings for the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. That is going to be insane, seeing that much detail, and the power of those two consoles alone for the Siren remake. That's just going to be insane. They're going to add so much horror to it. They're going to add so many twists. The levels will probably be much bigger and more thought out. There may even be extended story stuff to make it even scarier. Could you imagine just the gameplay you're seeing now, as good as this game looks on the PlayStation 2, what this would look like in 4K 120 or 8K 240? That would be absolutely insane. I don't think words can describe how good a remake would do of this game. And when you think about it, I will let the gameplay play out once I'm done so you can see how this mission unfolds. But like when you think about it, the remakes that PlayStation has had up to this point haven't really been risk-taking. They've been cartoon games, kiddie games like Crash, Spyro, Medieval, Ratchet and Clank, Shadow of the Colossus. There hasn't really been a big survival horror or big adult gory graphic remake at all. You could count Resident Evil 2 and 3, but Resident Evil 3 removed all the gore from Resident Evil 2, and Resident Evil 2, only English-speaking worlds got the gore version of the game. Asia had it censored, and most of South America had it censored as well. But when you look at this game, they can't remove any of that gore. Why? Because there isn't any gore. This game scares you based off of the scenery, the emotions it makes you feel, and just the way the world and gameplay is. This game doesn't have to have cheap jump scares to scare you. It's the music and the surrounding and the darkness that scares you. This game doesn't have to have heads chopped off or zombies running around without arms to scare you. This game is just scary. And if a remake was happening for this game in a perfect world, this would probably go on to be Game of the Year for that year. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen on the interweb, I plan to start making a lot of Siren videos and a lot more PlayStation 2 What If Remakes videos. So if you're interested in that, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you can see that in the future. Hit that bell icon. Try not to die.